Hi, everybody. This is Pastor Susan, your interfaith pastor, coming to you again after quite a long time. The last time I spoke to you all, I was planning on going to the Parliament of the World's Religions in August, but that plan kind of got sidetracked. First of all, I needed to have knee surgery for a torn meniscus, which would prevent me from flying to Chicago. And then to top it off, I fell and broke my wrist. And so now the wrist is almost healed and the knee is doing better. But I did not get to go to the Parliament. But I have asked and invited my friend, Sister Mary Friedland from the Brahma Kumari community, if she would share her experience with me and with us about what the Parliament was like for her. And she has graciously accepted that invitation. So I want to introduce Sister Mary to you, and she is going to, first of all, tell you a little bit about who she is and about her community, and then give you an overview of what she really got out of the Parliament. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Sister Mary. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This is really special for me because Susan and I met many years ago. I don't remember how many, but we were both, because of a grant, we were both hired to work at the Interfaith Center at the Presidio in San Francisco. And so we spent a lot of wonderful hours together down in that basement.
Yep. Yep.
Sharing our experiences and our spirituality. And so it was a friendship that really began as a spiritual friendship. So I appreciate you inviting me to share about the Parliament and the Brahma Kumaris.
Yeah.
The Brahma Kumaris, we are a global spiritual university. We're not allowed to call ourselves a university in the United States. We don't have any tenured professors and we never graduate. So, but that's what we are. We study spirituality, particularly consciousness. We call it the soul. And we study how to align ourselves with the original purity of the soul, the eternal qualities of the soul, and then bring those qualities into life to create a more harmonious world, and how to connect with the Supreme Soul. So we're all over the world, pretty much in every country now. We have special relationship with the United Nations. I can't remember the exact wording, so I'm not going to say it. But we participate in every UN function, pretty much, and holiday, etc. And of course, we're very involved in interfaith. And in the Bay Area, I think most of you people would be in the Bay Area. We were founding members of URI, United Religions Initiative, and we were founding members of the Interfaith Center at the Presidio, and also founding members of the San Francisco Interfaith Council. And I have to say, I was really spoiled having those three interfaith groups there. I thought the whole world was like that, and it's not. But
Could be.
It could be. It should be. And maybe it will be. So that's a little, and so I'm in Chicago now, which is where the Parliament was. So my experience of the Parliament has been very rich because I had people from all over the world coming here to be at the Parliament. And I coordinate the activities of the Brahma Kumaris for Chicago and other places in the Midwest.
Now, I know, Sister Mary, that you were very taken with the theme of the Parliament this year, especially around human rights. Is that correct? Yeah, you want to speak a little more about that?
Yeah, the theme of the Parliament was Call to Conscience, Defending Freedom and Human Rights. And I thought it's kind of a strange theme for an interfaith event until I, excuse me, until I found from my colleague, Sister Gayatri, who's the Brahma Kumari's representative at the UN, and she said that actually this theme is in honor of this being the 75th anniversary of the Declaration of Human Rights. And so we looked at how can we understand human rights from a spiritual perspective. That was kind of perspective that the Brahma Kumaris brought. And so we had a booth, and at our booth, we had little reflection cards, which had questions about conscience, freedom, and human rights, kind of from a spiritual perspective, to get people to, because of all of this interaction at the parliament, definitely we're all going to change our understanding of these concepts, but to get people to reflect on them. So I did a lot of reflecting, and how recognizing how really it's the interfaith community that has to take up this topic of human rights, because we can do it from a shared perspective that all of our traditions require us to do unto others as we would have others do unto us, whereas politicians have their own agendas.
Right.
So
Right.
it's really our mandate to take up this topic and present it in our own lives through our own spirituality.
And what I like about the parliament too is it's both learning about one another's traditions and spirituality, but it's also a call to action of what we can do to make that vision possible. So I know that I know you were super busy with running the Brahma Kumari house with everybody in and out, but I know that you got to go to at least 2 sessions that I know were very important to you. And I think they really kind of say exactly what you've just been talking about, the pathway, that the mandate that we have, and also how to go about it. I think the first one was called Understanding Spiritual Rights. That's an interesting title, I thought. Understanding Spiritual Rights.
Spiritual rights.
Yeah.
This came to be because, as I said, my colleague, Sister Gayatri, is the Brahma Kumari's representative at the UN and very involved in the interfaith community at the UN, which is, you would be surprised how large it is. It's huge. And so I wanted to propose a panel on a topic that she would be interested in. And several years ago, she got together with another group of NGOs in this interfaith group at the UN, and they talked about, what about spiritual rights? What are the spiritual rights of human beings? And she ended up writing a book on that topic. So that's how the topic was chosen. Sister Gayatri and a few of her other colleagues at the UN who have been involved in this endeavor. And of course, then Sister Gayatri couldn't come. There was an illness in the family.
Oh, no.
So she wasn't there. But it was really interesting. And one of the presenters, Kozomita Pedersen, who's takes a very scholarly approach. I believe she's an attorney. I really should have checked this before I started saying this. I believe she's an attorney, among other things, also a minister and very spiritually oriented. But she started by saying, and the topic was, so how do we implement this? How do we actually implement the Declaration of Human Rights worldwide? And she started by saying, actually, a lot of people on this planet don't agree with the Declaration of Human Rights, which of course we know that because we read the news a little bit at least. But her approach was that it's a really long-term process. 1948 was when the charter was ratified, and it wasn't easy to ratify it. It wasn't easy to get countries to sign it, and not even all nations have signed it. And so it's a very slow process. And even though human rights violations are enormous and seem to be escalating over time, her approach was that forget about that and keep on track. It's a good idea. Everybody is entitled to these rights. They are part of our the spiritual DNA of our religions, really. There's nothing in the Charter of Human Rights that would not agree with the spirit. I mean, there might be within certain religions, there might be protocols that deny equal rights to certain groups of people. Yes. Within the spirit of the religion, the essence of the religion, human rights are really what the religion is all about.
Yes. That's fascinating to think about what you just said about that. Now I can't even remember the term, and then something else you said caught my attention, so then I forgot. But what is the spiritual? I'm still thinking about these
The
spiritual rights.
spiritual rights. What
What
are
is
the
the name
spiritual?
of her book? What is the name of her book?
Well, I would have to find that out.
That's okay. That's all right. Just curious. I'm sure it's
Yeah.
would. And I had no idea that there was an interfaith contingent at the UN. I just had no idea. But of course, why wouldn't there be? But what a
Right.
fascinating thing to know about. I just want to
Right.
learn more
Right.
about that. So,
Yeah. Well, another aspect of it that I wanted to mention was after my conversation with you last week, I read the Declaration of Human Rights.
yeah,
I hadn't read
yeah,
it before.
yeah,
It's very short and it's very beautiful.
it is.
It's
It,
very essential and very beautiful, and it just states in very neutral language that these are the rights that everybody has, and that's that. And one interesting note that I saw was that initially, when they were making the charter, they were talking about the rights of all men, and
ah,
it was a delegate from India, a woman from India, who convinced them to say human beings.
oh my goodness. Hard to even imagine that now,
Nowadays.
but oh my goodness,
Yeah.
incredible. Wow, fascinating. Well, and this whole idea of being in it for the long term, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's so important too, that so many people have become so discouraged and disheartened and overwhelmed by just so many bad things happening in the world, and they just don't know what to do. And to understand that got to do something. You have to keep doing things. You have to just keep doing things and not give up because it is for the long. You got to keep the long picture of it. I think that's an important message that everybody needs to hear. And that comes back to the spiritual piece of it too, that we have to maintain our own spiritual center. Otherwise, we do get discouraged. So
Mm-hmm.
that I really like that.
And that was actually the
Ah,
second,
oh, sorry.
no, the second program that I went to towards a global ethic. So the
Uh-huh.
global ethic was a document drafted by the Parliament in 1993. It was first inspired by Brother Wayne Teasdale, a
Oh,
contemplative of the
yeah.
Christian religion.
Mm-hmm.
And then it had been, and if you read it and Brother Wayne, you can hear the Brother Wayne in it, but you
Uh,
can also see that there were other voices later on because they wanted to update it. And
okay.
but what they tried to do was take the UN Declaration of Human Rights and spiritualize it, make it a document that the interfaith world could adopt. So the global ethic is designed to be a protocol, a set of protocols that all human beings of all religions and no religion could adopt. And so the
Mm-hmm.
second session that I attended was okay, what's happening with the global ethic? And it's kind of the same, the same diagnosis that a lot is going on in the world, but the problems in the world are much worse. And even within religious organizations, there are a lot of scandals, etc. But the people on this panel, there were three of them. Sister Maureen from the Brahma Kumaris in London, Marilyn Turkovich, who is the executive director of the Charter for Compassion,
Oh,
which
okay.
was another new experience for me at the
Uh-huh.
Parliament.
Yeah.
And Susan, the other person, Susan, I forgot her last name, also associated with the Charter of Compassion. And they all kind of said, yes, um, we're not really measuring up to our ideals. But in their own way, they said what's needed is more contemplation, more inner work. We have to make our inner world peaceful and harmonious and accepting and tolerant like a beautiful garden, and then, to the extent that we do that, we can go out and do our work in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was just thinking how so many people there's this seeming dichotomy between spiritual and religious. People say I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. And I think oftentimes people think of spirituality as only being sort of that inner me all by myself sort of thing, or out in nature, which is wonderful too, but not really expanding that outward into the world. But you're talking about a whole much broader way of
Much
thinking about spirituality, for
right,
sure.
right, much broader, because spirituality also, yes, it involves enjoying spirit, but it also involves inner transformation. And I would say the heart of spirituality is transforming the negative to positive within myself. And so this requires a discipline, some kind of a disciplined study. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I couldn't do it without an organization. I could not do that disciplined approach of understanding myself and transforming myself without a spiritual community.
Yeah.
Then bringing it out into the world. But a lot of what happens in the world is a lot of, we should do this and we should do that, but who's going to take the first step? And that's what spirituality is.
Yeah. Well, I remember years ago, we were part of something somewhere talking about, I don't remember who had invited us. We were talking about accountability and how important it is to be in community too, because we need to have accountability. Because if I'm just by myself, I don't always know if what I'm thinking is the right way to go, or just testing the spirits kinds of things. So that's all part of this, um, being spiritual in community, I guess, is, and then going out into the world in order to trans allowing ourselves to be transformed within the community, and then going out in the world
Right.
to transform the world.
Right. And we need the community in order to transform, because most of
Yeah.
the difficulty that we have is with other people.
Yes.
And
except usually my difficulty with other people is because of something within myself,
exactly.
you
So
know.
we need the community. It brings out what needs
Yeah,
to be transformed within me. And if I'm not getting it, somebody will tell me.
that's right. Exactly.
and
Yes.
and also, like you said, that accountability is, I have to be accountable first to the people in my community to behave according to my religious or spiritual principles.
Yeah, exactly.
And to the extent that we can get along as a community and settle our differences harmoniously, and as time goes on with any community, the differences are getting more and more radical.
Yes.
And so it really requires us to go more deeply into the truth of our spirituality and change ourselves. And then as a community, we can have a positive influence in the world. Because I think another thing about, and I love that there are so many spiritual people in the world,
Mm.
but the thing about community is when we are engaging in spiritual practice, or we are even maybe doing a community project, as a spiritual community, that collective energy of the community is very powerful,
Yeah,
much more powerful than what we could do on our own.
absolutely. I think that is so true. Also, I think of my own little congregation, small congregation, so often think, we can't do anything. There's not what can we do? And yet, if we go out into the community and do a project, and let people know that this is what we do. This is what, for my community, it would be, this is what a Christian looks like. You know, that's a powerful thing for people to say, to see that, oh, church is not only about fighting with one another, it's about doing good in the world. It is powerful.
And
Yeah.
spreading joy.
Spreading, yeah.
Yeah,
Spreading joy. You can't beat that, right? Who can
yeah,
argue with joy? I guess
yeah.
somebody could, but yeah. But
But it's interesting. We started with the parliament and got onto the subject of spirituality. But I also
yeah.
wanted to mention at the last parliament, the 2018 parliament, I got together with a group of people who formed an organization called Transformation365.org.
Okay.
And we originally started putting on free of charge just different contemplative practices for people who might be interested, people who say, well, I'm spiritual, but like I want to go more deeply into that.
Yeah.
And so we did that. Every couple of weeks we'd produce another practice. And then when COVID started, before that, we would start all of our sessions with 5 minutes of silence. We're all in different spiritual communities, 5 minutes of silence. But during COVID, we didn't want to come out of the silence. And so we just went into silence, and that silence was our gift to the world.
That's amazingly wonderful. And is this something that is ongoing, or is now something
we meet every Wednesday, and now we do 20 minutes of silence, and we maybe do a check-in, or maybe we don't. And after the silence, we might have something to discuss, or maybe we won't. But we do 20 minutes of silence together every week, and so that's our offering to the world. And I guess that small group is my interfaith community now.
Yeah. Doesn't that sound, it sounds so counterintuitive in a way that silence can transform the world. And yet look what yapping at each other has done for us. It really hasn't worked too well.
Right.
So we might as well try it.
Right.
I think that's just wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just think I won't say I'm jealous, because that's not a very nice thing to be, but I can't wait to go to the next Parliament. Let's put it that way. I look forward to the next Parliament and maybe seeing you in person, but I'm glad that you were able to be there, and you took away so many wonderful things that you've taken back into your community and now are sharing with us too. So that's just so grateful to you for doing this and allowing our spiritual friendship to keep on growing. This is just fantastic.
That's the beauty of it. And I'd like to share one more thing that happened.
Yeah, sure.
The activist in me got activated.
All right.
And it's around this group called the Charter for Compassion. And it's an organization headquartered in London, but it's about making organizations compassionate by just learning about compassion and practicing compassion. And so they have, one of their programs is Compassionate Cities. Any city can become a compassionate city. And I've had this thought for several years now that Chicago should be a compassionate city, but I never acted on it. I talked to a couple people, but never acted on it. But I felt Chicago is a compassionate city, and particularly recently we have over 8,000 migrants from Texas that the city's trying to take care of. And, some of them, these people are still sleeping in police stations, and it's difficult. There's a lot of them. But for example, one of the students who comes to the Brahma Kumari Center has a landscaping business. So he hired 2 of them. And he was talking to him in his broken Spanish, and, do you have a child? And the man said, yeah, I have a son. And this person who hired them, he also has a son. So he said, when's the last time you talked to your son? He said 3 months ago. So this man who hired them, he went out, he got him a telephone. He gave him the telephone. He paid for the first month so that he could talk to his son. This is compassion action. And that story really motivated me. What that man did, that really motivated me to get involved in making Chicago a compassionate city.
I love it.
So there's a group of us, that the executive director, Marilyn Turkovich of Charter for Compassion, she lives in Seattle, but she's a former Chicagoan.
Okay.
And she's a university professor, so she knows a lot of people here, and we got a group together, and we're, seeing what this would look like. What would Chicago look like as a compassionate city? Who is already involved in compassionate action, who we can support? Yeah.
So, I know that we'll be hearing more about that. I have no doubt that you will do it. That's fantastic.
We would appreciate everybody's good wishes.
We are sending them to you, and I'm also, the activist in me is now, the wheels are spinning. So thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I know you've got lots of stuff to get to today. I'm so appreciative of your time. But thank you again for being with us. And
Yeah.
many, many blessings to you and your community as you go about your spiritual activism.
And
Love it.
thank you so much. Same to you. And we'll have to catch up because we didn't have a chance to do that at the Parliament.
We
But
will.
I always admired the spirit that you have to, you might have been talking about when you said there was something we were doing together. I can't remember, but we had a women's group that met once a month at the San Francisco Brahma Kumaris. And I asked you to come and speak on the topic of authenticity.
I guess that was it. Authenticity. That was it. I don't know how I got
Quality.
accountability out of that, but
That's the quality
authenticity.
that I really admire in you.
Well, thank you
One of
so much.
quality.
Thank you. Well, back at you.
Okay.
All right, Sister Mary.
Okay.
Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.